Friends, this is Peter Herbeck. I'm going to talk today about the drama of love. You know, the central drama of human life really is about love. And the key thing is, what is it that you love? Whom do you love? And whom do you love first and above all things? You know, Jesus said to us in the Gospels, when he was asked the question about the law and the heart of the law, he said, the first and the greatest commandment, this is the first and greatest thing, to love God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. So we see here three different kinds of, love of God, love of neighbor, love of self. And the most important one by far is the love of God. And all other loves flow from this and the love we have for God, as Jesus described it the way he did, we don't have that same kind of love for people. I mean, we don't love every person with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength the way we do God. Because the way we offer love to God is our total self. We give ourself to God. We belong to God, and we rejoice in belonging to God. We literally worship God. We seek to obey God in all things, all of his commandments, and to do everything he calls us to do. Well, that's not how we relate to ourselves or to other people unless our loves are screwed up or disordered or under some kind of the influence of evil. We make things, people or ourselves, idols. And so I was thinking about it yesterday in the context of Paul's conversation, St. Paul's letter to 2 Thessalonians, where he's talking about the end time of the return of the Lord and the end time falling away. And Paul makes clear in it that, first of all, that before the Lord returns, two things are going to happen. There's going to be a great apostasy. That's a turning away from the faith of people who once believed in God, believed in Jesus, the Gospels. And number two, the rise of the Antichrist. Those are two big historical moments. But then Paul describes what's going on in people who are turning away from God. And he uses, talks about love. And it's really about getting seduced by the devil, being captured by the world, giving into disordered, emotions, disordered feelings, and having our minds darkened because we love the wrong things, right? For example, in 2 Timothy chapter 3, Paul describes what the whole spiritual, emotional reality that's going on in the last days. He said, but understand this, in the last days there will come times of stress. For men will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, inhuman, implacable, slanderers, profligates, fierce, haters of good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, holding the form of religion, but denying the power of it. Paul says, avoid such people. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 3 said, in those days, they will not endure sound doctrine, but according to their own desires, because they have itching ears, we want to hear what we want to hear. They will heap up for themselves teachers, and they will turn their ears away from the truth and be turned aside to fables. So what we see is really that what's driving people in the end time falling away, and why it's worth paying attention to what's going on right now in the world, because we're experiencing, we're witnessing an apostasy happening in this hour in history. Is it the final one? I don't know. Could be. No one knows for sure. At some point, the final one's going to come. But if this isn't the final apostasy and turning away, it's one heck of a dress rehearsal, because very large numbers are turning away for these very reasons. So again, Paul underlines they do not love the truth, and they take pleasure in unrighteousness, and they become lovers of self. Now, what Paul's talking about here really is disordered love. I'm the center of it. And you can see that kind of loving myself and being preoccupied by myself, seeking to please myself constantly. This is the loving preoccupation with the self that dethrones God at the center of our life. It's an expression of disordered love. And you can see it today. In the turning away, in the apostasy is fundamentally a rebellion, a refusal to love and to love rightly. To say, like, in order for me to be happy, which is my biggest concern, in order for me to be free, which is my right, I have to be the master of my own life. I define what's good. I define what's lovable in my life. I define what love is itself. I'm the master of it all. And so in order for that to happen, God gets pushed from the picture. As Romans 1 says, in that condition, when the human mind becomes darkened and the heart is not ordered rightly toward God, humanity refuses to acknowledge God and to give him thanks. To avoid having to face the reality of God, to reject God, human beings suppress the truth about God. So Paul's talking here about they don't love the truth. And the first thing apostates don't love is the truth about God. You can see these same dynamics, as I said, happening in the battle that's going on currently in the life of the church. Paul again says in 1 Timothy 4:1, explains, he said that their people are departing from the faith. They're giving heed to deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons. Now, if you talk to people, they wouldn't describe it that way. And there's been so much talk on YouTube and in many places about, one of the causes of the turning away is the scandal, the abuse scandal in the hiding of the reality of the abuse in the church. Now, some people did leave the church because of that, no doubt about it. Now, but at the same time, others are leaving for other reasons, saying, that science has somehow disproven faith. But at the end of the day, what's happening is human beings are leaving because they refuse to love the truth, which is God himself. For men will be lovers of self. They will be lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. This is the fundamental battle. Whom are you going to love? Of course, the command of God to love with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength is a question of to whom do I belong? That's why the love of God, the call to love God that way is so radically different. It's absolutely unique. This is where God calls us to it because this is where human beings will be fulfilled. We're created for this love, to give our entire self to God. And sin and rebellion caused us to withdraw, to not trust God, to hate God, to turn away from God. Jesus came to deal with that sin problem, to make it possible to give his Holy Spirit to us, to give us a new heart, to be able to love God from the core of our being so we can come into the reality of who we are. This is what it means to be saved, ultimately, to live in God's love and ultimately live in God's love with God forever. And the consequences of disordered loves or coming to love the wrong things has serious consequences in this life, personally, socially, culturally. I think I mentioned a number of months ago, St. Augustine's famous quote. He's the writer of a book called How Civilizations Die, reflecting on the fact that civilizations do die. And they often die because they lose a perception of reality and perception of the transcendent. And here's Augustine. Augustine argued that states fail because peoples fail, and peoples fail because they love the wrong things. A nation defines itself by what it loves, and the wrong sort of love condemns it to eventual ruin. How do states fail? How do civilizations fail? They come to love the wrong thing. Look at how much of the suppression of God, the things of God, God's commandments, the reality of the transcendent, belief in God, how much that is being suppressed today, ignored, and people are giving themselves over to other loves, as Paul described. It's a good description and a clear understanding of what we're experiencing as a culture, and the culture in the West. I mean, we're headed for what Augustine is describing. In some ways, a blind man can see that our culture is failing, right? Wars after wars after wars, crime, corruption, money gone crazy, just one thing after another. It's shaking. It's not sound. And it's fundamentally, friends, because we fail to order our lives properly, right? Finally, just want to say, as Christians, we're called to be witnesses in the context of this disruption, the false definitions of love, and everything that's going on around us, to live the faith, to love God first, to let the Lord and the Holy Spirit help you live with rightly ordered love. And if it's God's will and this amazing opportunity can come your way, you could literally die a witness. You could die a martyr. And listen to how the book of Revelation describes being a martyr, being a witness to the Lord and to his love. The martyr is one who overcomes Satan by the blood of the Lamb. That's the sacrifice of Jesus, the new life, the power, the life of God in us, in the Lord, and the word of their testimony. And they love not their lives even unto death. We gave testimony and witness in the face of, false definitions of love and all the consequences that come with it when a whole culture moves in that direction. We're called and equipped and empowered by God to stand as lovers, witnessing to what love really means, and what that means in part, and what the saints are rejoicing in the martyrs in heaven. It's like incense is going up before the altar, because these brothers and sisters loved, but they loved not their lives even unto death. They didn't love themselves first. They didn't love themselves in such a way that they lose their lives forever, but instead they loved God first, and they loved neighbor first by speaking the truth in love, and they loved themselves in God by giving to God what belongs to God and becoming the person that they were meant to be. Here's the big challenge. I think this is it, friends, right now, for Christians everywhere, to live this way, to remember, to whom do I belong? What does he call me to do? And what I really need to be is a living, suffering, faithful witness in this time of difficulty. Blessed be God. Let's do that. If you enjoyed this video, hit the subscribe button. Ring the bell as well while you're there. Hope you can tune in again in a couple of weeks. God bless.